I know this sounds like a bold and outrageous statement, but I think this is one of the ways we heal the world.
Hello, all. This is Bill Spangler-Dunning, your regional minister. I'm coming to you with a great opportunity for you to consider. Essentially, it's a live Sunday school class where you'll be joined with other churches around the region to try to explore a new model of faith development. And it really starts with me introducing you to a good friend of mine, Dr. and Reverend Tim Diebold, and he's got a new book out, but I want him to just sort of tell you a little bit about his own faith journey, and then we'll get into the book that he's going to be doing a class on.
I grew up in a minister's household in Abilene, Texas, West Texas. My dad was a longtime disciple minister, and for a while, I knew exactly what I was going to be when I grew up. I was going to be a minister because that's what my dad did. And then I went through a period of time where I had no idea what I was going to be, but I knew I was not going to be a minister because that's what my dad did. And eventually, the prior of those avenues won out, and I became a minister. Not because that's what my dad did, but because of a sense of call that others have experienced at church camp, which is where mine occurred as well. And after a few pastorates in Texas, relocated to Des Moines, Iowa, where I served a church for almost 20 years. And toward the latter stage of that, my wife and I got really interested in cooking and food and where food comes from. And I felt this really deep call, very much like ministerial calls, to become a part of the circle of those who know how to grow food on simpler terms. And my only problem was I had nothing to remember because I'd never done it before. And so I retired. We moved to an acreage outside of town and spent about 15 years practicing that honored tradition. And toward the end of that, living on the acreage in the midst of wondrous beauty, we had chickens, we had bees, we had vegetables, we had fruit trees. I woke up one January morning and realized I had just fed the chickens, I had just done chores, and I hadn't paid a single bit of attention to anything that I had just done. And I realized I'd fallen into this rut, this mindless routine of taking care of business, but without really noticing, without paying attention to what was happening around me, the beauty, the activity, the sounds. And that broke my heart. And that year became for me a year to concentrate on the notion of awe. And so the seeds were planted for this book that focuses on the experience of awe. And we can talk more about that along the way, but that's sort of the genesis of the book.
In this new experiment way of doing Sunday school, what do you imagine you would be, talking about in the chapters of the book or something like that? Tell us a little bit about what that might look like.
So the book divides pretty equally into this notion of awe, what it is, and what that experience does mentally, physiologically, etc. And also my recognition that the experiences of awe are incredibly ephemeral. You experience awe at the rising of the sun, and then it's risen, that's gone. And I began to wonder then, are there ways to hold on to that experience with some durability? And so that notion of savoring experiences of awe becomes the focus of the second half of the book. And I try to make clear in the book, I am not an expert, and this is not a how-to book. I am a companion on this journey that overlooks stuff as much as anybody else does. But there are some, well, I point out in the book, we don't always know, we can't predict exactly where lightning is going to strike, but we do know some things about lightning that can put us in places where it's often strikes, where it's likely to strike. And I think there's some of those kinds of skills to learn about experiencing awe. And there are certainly strategies that the academic world, et cetera, has begun to discern about strategies for savoring. And so in a class, it seems to me, we can talk about the various elements of both of those pieces with an eye for how do we practice? How do we get more accustomed to opening ourselves to experiences of awe, and how do we learn the skills to savor them more effectively?
If a church were thinking about doing something like this, what would you hope that they, both as a church, but also as individuals, what would you hope they might get out of this class?
I know this sounds like a bold and outrageous statement, but I think this is one of the ways we heal the world. Part of what happens in awe is we get out of ourselves and in touch with something that is infinitely larger than us. We become connected to that which is larger than we are. We become attuned to that which is larger. There is so much brokenness, and awe begins to repair into a wholeness. And so, if we as individuals can become more skilled at and habituated in the practices of experiencing awe and savoring them, then I think we become more a part of each other. As churches begin to do that same work together, I think we begin to heal our communities in appreciative ways rather than combative ways. I think that it's a way to heal the world.